Ladies and gentlemen, John Christopher Alexander sitting in tonight for the one and the only, the big John Mason. I'm with the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, www.lacag.org, www.lacag.org, slaying the legislative rhinos one vote at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, do you want to know why you felt so much pressure from all those vaccine mandates? Do you want to know why you were locked down? Do you want to know why your taxes are so high? Do you want to know why you wonder about whether your vote counts in this country and in this state anymore? Do you want to know why you feel like you're living in a minority when you're living in the majority? Do you wonder why you have to worry about what your kids are being taught in school and whether you have to go and actually monitor it to make sure they're not being taught garbage and stuff that's going to poison their minds? Do you ever get tired of living in the kind of state that we're living in right now? Let me tell you the reason why. It is because we have representatives in our legislature who are selling you out. They could be protecting you. They could be defending you. They could be defending the United States Constitution and protecting individual freedom, but they're not, because they are sold out to big special interests and they have become corrupted by power. And if you want to do something about that, you need to remember my name, John Christopher Alexander, and you need to remember the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, because we are cleaning out the state legislature and we are returning it to you, courtesy of the red, white, and blue. Go to our website, www.lacag.org, and see what we're up to. Send us an email, info@lacag.org, or follow us on Facebook, but the email is info@lacag.org, and we are moving forward relentlessly to return the supreme lawmaking body in the state of Louisiana to you, the people. And isn't it high time? Isn't it time? I spent 2 years down there at the legislature watching what these liberal Republicans do down there, the same ones who run on a platform of constitutional conservatism, the ones who talk to you about the red, white, and blue and apple pie and family and protecting you while they're running for office. And they get in there and they get bought and paid for by big special interest groups, and they forget about the people who elected them. And that's what they are doing. But guess what my group is doing? We're down there during the legislative session, and they can't get away from us. We're watching what they do in committee. We're watching what they do in the full chamber. We're watching what they do in the halls of the legislature. They cannot hide from us anymore. And let me tell you about a great victory that we had very recently. Our organization is very young, but we're getting very big and very powerful already. There's a young man named Caleb Klein-Peter who challenged in the 17th Louisiana Senate District just this past November. And he is a good conservative, patriotic Republican, and he beat an entrenched incumbent in the 17th Senate District, and he beat him in the primary. And you know how he did it? You know how Klein-Peter did it? Klein-Peter did it because he went around and he told the voters in that big district exactly what that incumbent was doing, voting against our veterans, voting for radical poisonous doctrine being injected into our public schools, failing to protect us against these draconian vaccine mandates and lockdowns, failing to protect us from critical race theory in our public schools, and all of the other things, failing to protect us from election fraud in the state of Louisiana. And Caleb Kleinpeter went and told all the constituents. He went to every door in that district. And guess what? He not only won, he won in a primary, which is huge and which is stunning. And this should be a bellwether for anybody who wants to run for office in Louisiana. Have courage, speak the truth, and be relentless in speaking the truth and in proclaiming it loudly and proudly. Don't be afraid to expose these RINOS records. The citizens of Louisiana will support you if they simply know what is going on. So that's what we're about. Support our group and help us to fight for you in this state and in this country. If you feel lonely, if you feel outnumbered, if you feel as though your voice is not being heard, and you're concerned about your family, remember Chris Alexander and Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. Caleb Kleinpeter, and remember the name of the new state senator down in the 17th district. There's something else I want to tell you about this past December. Well, December 10th, last weekend, actually, there were three very, very important amendments on the ballot. Are you ever concerned about whether or not non-citizens are voting in our elections? Do you ever think there may come a time when non-citizens will be allowed to vote in our elections? Do you think there's a national push on the part of the left to allow non-U.S. citizens to vote in our elections? Well, there was an amendment on the ballot that LeCag supported very strongly this past Saturday. And that amendment prohibits any non-U.S. citizen from voting in any Louisiana election. And it passed overwhelmingly. So now in our Constitution is an express prohibition against any non-U.S. citizen voting in any Louisiana election, whether it be local, municipal, state, or federal. It doesn't matter. We are going to protect our election system in the state of Louisiana. And there were two other amendments as well that required legislative oversight for any governor appointment of any big commission. Separation of powers doctrine. The governor should not have unchecked power to appoint anybody he wants to any position. So now in our Constitution, there is a requirement that the legislature must approve any governor's appointment to any position. So that's going to diminish corruption in our state, and it's going to advance us toward a system of transparency and honesty once again. Those are some big victories that LeCag and other groups have secured very, very recently. We are moving forward to save this state and thrilled to be in a position to be able to do so. I want to talk to y'all tonight and the big topics tonight. When we get back, we're going to be talking about two RINO Republicans in Jefferson and St. Charles Parish. And you need to know the names of these two people because they have to be defeated, because they're the very reason why we're in the situation we're in the state of Louisiana. Remember Stagni and Hilferty.
All right, man, take it.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. J. Christopher Alexander sitting in for the big John Mason, slaying the RINOs one vote at a time. Joe Stagni, state representative, first elected as a Republican in 2017 in a special election. And on the eve of his election, Mr. Stagni said, "I'm looking forward to working hard to tackle all the tough issues that impact our district and Louisiana." That's what Stagni said in 2017 when he was elected to the state legislature in Louisiana in a special election. If you live in St. Charles or Jefferson parishes, you absolutely need to listen to what I'm fixing to tell you. In 2021, Joe Stagni was the only Republican in the Louisiana legislature who voted against the Fairness in Women's Sports bill. You remember the bill in 2021 that would have prohibited any men who have supposedly transitioned into being a woman from competing against women in female sports. It was a much needed bill because it was a response to this radical leftist push throughout the country to allow transgenders to compete against women in sports. It had overwhelming support in the Louisiana legislature, except Joe Stagni, the Republican, voted not only against the bill, but he voted against overriding the governor's veto of that bill when it passed. So when the governor vetoed it and the Republicans convened a veto override session, Joe Stagni was one of 2 votes to vote against overriding that veto, and the override fell 2 votes short. Joe Stagni, the Republican from St. Charles and Jefferson Parish, was half the reason that bill did not become law in 2021. The law that simply would have prohibited men from competing against women in competitive sports. And do you know what Joe Stagni said in order to defend his vote on that issue? Quote, "If there are transgender children that want to play athletics, we need to figure out a way to make it an even and fair playing field. But I think you don't want to be exclusive to anyone. You certainly don't want to exclude anyone. You want to be inclusive and figure out a way to do that." Thank you, Joe. How do you do that, Joe? How do you make it fair, Joe, when you're letting men compete against women? How do you ever make that a level playing field? Who bought and paid for you, Joe Stagni? And why in God's name would you ever oppose a bill that simply would make sure that men don't get to compete against women in sports, competitive sports from kindergarten through college? That is such a feeble excuse. Amazing to me. And another excuse that Representative Stagni made was that this is not an issue in Louisiana now. We don't have transgenders trying to compete against women. So what's the point? Well, Joe, it's happening in other places in the country. So why not be preemptive about it? We know at some point they're going to try to do it here. Why wait until after it happens? Why not go ahead and legislatively prohibit it now so we avoid any controversy in the future? We're not doing this in Louisiana. No, Joe, those are just silly excuses. And you know that. You know that you were just making up silly excuses because you're bought and paid for by somebody. And perhaps at some point you could tell the people who bought and paid for you that would cause you to be the only Republican in the state legislature to oppose a bill this important, this simple, and this much of a no-brainer. And you're the only one, Joe. You ought to have a framed picture on the wall of the state legislature that says, "Here is pictured Joe Stagni, the only Republican in the 2021 Louisiana legislative session who thought it was okay for men to compete against women in competitive sports." That's the way you should be remembered, Joe. In ignominy, in shame, in disgrace. That's the way you should be remembered because of that vote and your complete and total failure to protect women from men in competitive sports,
Hey, Chris.
and to give them honor and integrity in their own sport.
Chris.
Yeah.
We have a caller, man. John Swisher, WGSO is calling. Okay.
Oh, great. How much time do we have for the commercial?
We got a little while, but John?
Hey, I'm on, buddy.
Hey,
Chris.
John, how are you? Welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I tell you what, you want to find out where these clowns are getting their money from? Go to his website called followthemoney.org.
You think
you would be
you
surprised?
Find it out there, huh? Yeah.
Yes, on both sides of the aisle. And our dishonor code governor, John Bell, Taco Bell Edwards, he's financed by trial lawyers and, believe it or not, Progressive Insurance.
What is the John over there? Because we're talking about Stagni tonight.
Right.
What is the deal with this guy Stagni?
I don't know. Jeff did a lot of research on him. Jeff Crouer.
Yeah, Jeff did a lot of research on him, and Jeff actually started a recall petition on him after he voted against the Fairness in Women's Sports bill in 2021. And there was a whole lot, John, you probably know this, there was a whole lot of pressure put on Representative Stagni once that recall petition was started. And do you know what happened? He changed course. And when the bill was brought in 2022, SB 156, guess what? He changed course and he voted for it. And nobody really knows why. He changed his opinion. And all of a sudden he decided it was okay for women to compete only against women in sports. But, he said, well, they excluded intramural sports. And so, therefore, I thought it was okay to vote for it. I'm like, give me a break, dude. The only reason why you voted for it this time was because Jeff Crouer subjected you to relentless, withering public pressure to change your opinion, and you thought you were going to be recalled. And so you changed your opinion the next session and you voted for it. It was pure political pressure, which honestly makes me respect him even less, John.
Tell me about it. I would like to go to his office in Kenner one day and give him my 2 cents, but I might get in trouble. I'm already on a couple of elected officials' poo-poo lists because I kind of speak my mind lately.
Well, John, let me tell you what. Nobody has ever accused you of not speaking your mind. I'll tell you that. And you are a great American, and you have a tremendous courage. And I love listening to your show as well. And I very much appreciate the call in tonight. And we have
I'll hold on for the next segment if you want.
Yeah, do that. Hold over for the next segment. I got a couple other issues about Representative Stagni that I want to talk to you about. This is J. Christopher Alexander sitting in, and we'll discuss it right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. J. Christopher Alexander, Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, slaying the RINOS one vote at a time. I have a special guest on the line, John Swisher, host of Patriotic Jambalaya and a great American. And, John, I wanted to, before I ask you a very specific question about another issue, I wanted to make it clear to the listeners that Representative Joe Stagni voted against a very no-brainer, straightforward bill in 2021 that would have simply prohibited men from competing against women in female sports. Not only voted against that bill, but he voted to sustain the governor's veto override of that bill. That in and of itself, in my opinion, is enough to disqualify him from further public service. He comes back the following year, 2022, and suddenly he's changed his position and decides he's for the bill at that point when the bill was rebrought. And he said the reason why he changed his position was because they had excluded intramural sports from the purview of the bill. So the bottom line is, John, he's lying. The reason why he changed his position was because Jeff Cruaire started a recall petition against him to get his butt out of office, and he was suffering withering public criticism. So he comes back in the next session and he changes his mind and decides he wants to support a common sense bill. So he's lying about his reasons for changing his position.
He's got another problem on his hand when he's at the Capitol. He's got Mother Superior Susie LaBrie that he's got to worry about too.
Well, that's true. Now, let me tell you something, John. Susie LaBrie, she doesn't miss much, does she?
Oh, hell, not at all.
Yeah.
And for future, if this is for anybody who wants to run for office as a Republican, they must be vetted by Martha Huckabee. If she detects rhino in you, she will detect if there's any rhino in you. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, let me tell you what, John, you are so right. Martha Huckabee is, you talk about an American who I would want with me if I was in a foxhole. Martha Huckabee is a great American, as you are. And it is such a privilege to be able to go onto her show periodically, Liberty or Lockdown, and discuss some of these issues with Martha. She's just such a good friend and such a good American. Stagni is such a rhino. By the way, John, do you remember in September or October of 2021, after COVID had been around since March or April of 2020, the point where everybody finally realized, I mean, we should have realized it very early on, that this really only posed a risk to people who had severe comorbidities or the elderly, that you shouldn't be locking down a whole state over this. Everybody knew that. And
yes,
there was a petition, John, in October of 2021, something like 18 months after this COVID outbreak, petition to terminate state of public health emergency and just to limit the governor's COVID powers, break us away from this lockdown that was killing businesses, killing jobs, ruining lives, ruining families. Do you know who refused to sign that petition to terminate this tyrannical governor's state of public health emergency? Representative Joe Stagni refused to sign that petition, John.
Didn't Hilferty refuse to sign it too?
Now, I don't know for sure about Hilferty on that deal, but I will certainly research that between now and the next time I write something or come on this show, because she may well have. But I can tell you 100% that Joe Stagni did nothing to help Louisiana citizens get back to work and get out from under that staggering burden of oppression that this government was imposing upon Louisiana citizens through this COVID lockdowns.
Free money, quote unquote, free money from the feds by having a lockdown. Oh, mask mandates and all that. Remember, they were making up fines if you were caught not wearing a mask.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And
you are right, John.
And John Bell's wife, Donna Bell Edwards, was making public service announcements. Wear your mask, wash your hands, devoutly worship Obama, spit on Trump. The actual words she said.
Oh my gosh!
They're blaming this scandemic on Trump. Yes, it's a scamdemic. You heard what I said, scamdemic, because coronavirus has been around for years.
Yes, you know what, John? It was a scamdemic from the very beginning. I never bought it. You should isolate the people who are seriously vulnerable, and the vast majority of the Louisiana citizens you don't touch. You let them work. You let them move forward with their lives. That's just the opposite of what was done. No time in history has a pandemic or an epidemic illness ever been handled in such a way by the government ever. I want the listeners to know that Representative Joe Stagni, he contributed to the misery of the citizens of Louisiana.
And another rhino named CS. I cannot mention his name. He's a friend of mine, but I need to talk. I don't like what he's doing. I thought he was a friend of mine.
Wait a minute, John. Who is this?
CS.
I don't think I know. Wait.
The speaker.
Oh, Clay Schexnayder? Clay Schexnayder did more to sabotage the conservative agenda in the Louisiana legislature in 2 years than anybody else who's ever been down there. He is an absolute disgrace to public service. And whatever he decides to run for in the future, he is going to be met with fierce opposition from the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group and many other groups. He is not fooling anybody.
He has to face Sister Martha, Sister Lenore, Sister Connie, Sister Terry, and Mother Superior Susie.
And the one and only Big John Swisher.
That's right.
Yes, and, indeed, my brother. So listen,
and the right
Stagni,
thing. Wonder Woman and Batgirl.
Right, exactly. So Joe, but what I'm telling you is, I just want everybody to know that Joe Stagni has got to be defeated. He's got to be beaten. He is a textbook example of what is wrong with the Louisiana legislature. He is a rhino. He is not a constitutional conservative. He's weak, and Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group has him in our crosshairs because he's got to go. He can't do what he's done.
Wasn't he a Democrat when he first started?
I don't know if he was a Democrat, John. That's a great question. I know he served on the
A lot of these Democrats changed the Republicans so they can get the votes. But they still.
I've got to check that. I know he was on the Kenner. Yeah, I know he was on the Kenner City Council for a number of years. I know he did have an issue, a personal issue, which we don't really get into because everybody is human. We all make mistakes on a personal level. I'm talking about his record. I'm talking about what the man has done as a leader in the legislature. Do you know that he voted against SB 118 back in 2021 that would have allowed a woman to have a legally owned firearm in her purse so she could protect herself from a criminal attack, and she didn't have to go get permission from the government to carry that purely defensive firearm? Stagni voted against that bill as well. He voted against it.
What a human excrement he is. Excuse my language.
John, if you want to hang over, I'd love to visit with you.
I'm going to hang on for the next segment, the last segment.
Awesome. Jay Christopher Alexander visiting with the one and only John Swisher on the Big John Mason Show. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
Oh, God.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Christopher Alexander for either the last or the second to last segment, visiting with the one and only John Swisher, host of Patriotic Jambalaya and otherwise Great American. I know we've spent a good bit of time tonight talking about the rhino globalist Joe Stagni from St. Charles and Jefferson Parish, who must be defeated in 2024 when he runs for re-election. He is so vulnerable and so weak. All he needs is a good candidate against him. But there's another one.
Bye-bye.
John?
No. We need to tell Joe Stagni.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, indeed, sir. And there's another one over there, Jefferson Parish, Metairie area, by the name of Stephanie Hilferty. John, do you happen to remember when a representative named Ray Garofalo brought a bill before the Education Committee that would have prohibited critical race theory from being taught in our public schools?
Yes, Martha told me all about it. She even had it on her show many a times, and Stephanie voted against him.
She voted against it. not only did she vote against it, she accused Representative Garofalo in committee basically of being a racist. And then 7 hours later, she is on CNN accusing Representative Garofalo of being a racist on national television. It absolutely blows my mind. She went on CNN 7 hours later and said about a fellow Republican legislator, she said, "What is sad to me is that people across the state were looking at their phone or computer and seeing that a Louisiana lawmaker was talking about the good of slavery, and that is very sad to me." That, Representative Hilferty, is absolutely reprehensible that you would lie about a fellow lawmaker that way. I was down there. Martha Huckabee was down there. We sat there and saw exactly what it said.
She
Go ahead.
They called Martha a racist, in which she is not. I've known Martha a long time from back.
Right.
She was good friends with my late sister, Davy's sister, Shannon. I just recently got to know her again in the past couple of year and a half. Martha is not a racist. Martha is a true Christian conservative American who loves her country.
I know she does, and she's a good human being.
And that just burns my butt. So whoever started, and you heard about her being called a racist, huh?
Yes, I did. But the point I'm making right now is that Stephanie Hilferty had the audacity to go on CNN and suggest that a fellow Republican, Ray Garofalo, who is a decent man, an honorable man,
he would have been
was a racist. And that, to me, in and of itself, not only are you opposing a bill that would prohibit the teaching of our children to hate the Constitution and to hate African Americans and for African Americans to hate white Americans, this critical race theory stuff, not only are you opposing that, you're going on national television and suggesting that one of your colleagues, Republican colleagues, is a racist. You ought to not run for office again. You ought to not run for office again. You ought to resign, and you owe Ray Garofalo an apology. I've been waiting for this apology, John, for months and months and months. So whenever you hear over there that Representative Stephanie Hilferty has apologized to Ray Garofalo for defaming his character on CNN the way that she did, would you let me know when she does that?
I sure will, but that probably won't happen. She also owes Martha an apology, too. Didn't Martha campaign for her and Stephanie turned her back on Martha? I don't know.
Now, I don't know. Now, I did not know about that. I didn't know. Tell me about
it. It's either Stephanie or Julia Letlow that Martha campaigned for, and they turned Rhino on us.
Oh, wow. Do you remember you don't remember which one it was for sure?
Not offhand. I need to talk to Martha. I'll probably talk to Martha tomorrow. We're working on a special project that's going to put WGSO on the map. We're going to be a force to be reckoned with, buddy.
Got it. But you promised me that you'll let me know when Representative Hilferty apologizes to Ray Garofalo for defaming him on national television. You're going to let me know that? Okay.
Yeah.
And will you also let me know whenever Representative Hilferty apologizes to the public for opposing a bill that would have prohibited the teaching of transgenderism in our public schools and radical sexual concepts? Will you let me know when she apologizes for that to her Republican constituents in Metairie and Jefferson Parish?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Everybody's calling us. Remember when we went canvass Ascension Parish in late August?
Yeah.
Everybody's calling us. They're calling us racist, but they don't understand. We're doing this for the Lord. We're doing the Lord's work, and we're doing it at our own expense. The state of Louisiana does not reimburse us for gas. We're doing this because we love this state, we love this country, and we love our Almighty Lord Jesus Christ.
You better believe it, John.
That's why
the Lord Jesus, John, And the Lord Jesus Christ never said one thing about race. And I know you, John, and I know that if there was an African American on the side of the road somewhere who needed you, you would be the first to pull over and help him because you don't see
That's
race.
right.
We are all made in God's image. It doesn't matter if we're black or white, and we're not the ones who are pitting the races against one another. It's not us doing that, is it?
It's the Democrats. They are guilty of everything they accuse us of.
Yes, it's called
Lyndon
projection.
James Johnson started it. He started with a six-letter N-word.
I cannot argue with that. He sure did. He created an institutional dependency in this country, the likes of which we've never seen. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt before him, to some degree too. But John, I want to tell you what an honor it is to have you on the show tonight. We only have just a couple of minutes left, but I want to once again say that the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, with the help of good people like John Swisher and others, are cleaning out the state legislature. We are exposing the globalists without apology. We are revealing how they kill good legislation in committee or in the hallways of the legislature, or simply by refusing it to call it to a vote in a full chamber. We are missing nothing. We're seeing everything. The Paula Davises, the Stephanie Hilfertys, the Joe Stagnis, the Clay Sexniders. We are coming after you relentlessly, and we are winning. And there are more patriotic Americans like John Swisher out there than there are leftist globalists. And we are going to win.
My show is going to 2 hours next year. It's very possible I may have a co-host. And when my lawsuit's settled with my insurance company, I'm gonna be coming out and smelling like a road. When I'm gonna be opening up getting back in the automotive business. Auto Mall Collision will be supporting LACAG. I'm going to be supporting. We
love you, man. Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, J. Christopher Alexander, sitting in for the big John Mason. God bless you all, and thank you for having us on. Let's go get them.